I'm going to start moderating some questions and answers. I've been tracking this in the question box. And this can be for anybody on the call. Was finding the PPE necessary for COVID? Was it hard to find for you guys? And I'll start that off with Bill Oliva. Was any of the PPE hard to find for you guys? The office or for your inspectors, anything like that? Was it hard to find any additional masks or anything like that?
Yep, the PPE was supplied by the department to our inspection staff. Initially, it was a little bit difficult to come by and to understand really what was required. But eventually, the state of Wisconsin secured a pretty ample supply for the field staff and got it out to them with guidance on how to use it.
What about for Tom Donnelly with being a consultant, and you probably had a few more that was it hard to find some of that stuff, or was it easy to get hold of?
You want Tom the manufacturer or Tom the consultant? There's
Tom,
two Toms.
Tom the manufacturer, Tom Donnelly.
As far as answering that question, Dan, I would say yes. Starting, I mean, when I hit the road in June, you really couldn't find gloves. I mean, Harbor Freight, the basic, Menards here in the Midwest, Home Depot, you couldn't find gloves. IPA, isopropyl alcohol, you really couldn't find it either. To answer your question, I was pretty much relying on what stock we had on hand when I traveled. I would say that's kicked in the last, I would say July, probably late July, we start seeing it on the store shelves here.
And just a follow-up question for you, Tom Donnelly, was just manufacturing in general. Was it hard for you guys to get components for your materials? How has the supply chain been pretty consistent, or have you had a big break in it?
To be honest with you, from my perspective out in the field, and communicating with Mike on that, he probably understands it better than I do. But I would say we didn't miss a thing. We had really good inventory, strong inventory on as far as metal and raw chemicals and the powders, et cetera, at our manufacturers. We didn't miss a beat as far as shipping. We were down for the 3 days beginning in March. But no, I mean, it was just smooth, despite the diversity of products and the worldwide supply that we have.
I actually had a question that came up throughout the presentation. So there's just things you don't think about until you hear you guys talk. But I think Bill and a couple other folks mentioned only one person in a bucket truck at a time, and I can really understand how that slows down inspection because now you've got one guy not being able to and not a note taker. But was there any trade-offs? I want to say this the right way. Was there any conversations about trade-offs and safety? Because a lot of times we'd like to send 2 people to a site to keep everybody safe. At any time, did you guys have to have discussions about traditional safety stuff versus COVID safety stuff as a result of this? Bill.
In Wisconsin, from the get-go, and with credit to our governor, it was made abundantly clear that the safety of our staff was ultra important. So however we proceeded, we ensured that they were protected, both from COVID and other operational circumstances. So in inspection, though there might be one person in the bucket, we'd have multiple people for traffic control and other operations associated with the inspection process. So in that respect, I think they were, well, in hand, and that we did not compromise their safety.
That's good. That's good. I know this has been a challenge. Just even things like, a lot of times we have follow boats in the water, and so making sure those guys are staying distant must be difficult.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, I mean, I think similar to what Bill said, we would really never compromise safety in terms of what we do in the field. I mean, you do have to balance a few things, but yeah, we had one person in our snooper in the bucket, and we actually had a kind of a near-miss incident associated with that, and we ended up writing a very extensive standard operating procedure moving forward, assuming that there may only be one person in the bucket instead of 2, to ensure we didn't have more incidents. And then I'm sure everybody's kind of followed along and aware that we had a much more active hurricane season than usual. And one of the things we talked about is we were limiting to one person per vehicle, feasible, but when we were sending people in for field response into flood situations, we made the decision to go ahead and put a couple people in each vehicle because weighing the risk, it felt like it was the little bit of extra exposure with 2 or 3 people in a vehicle was less than sending 3 vehicles out into a flooded area. So yeah, you just got to kind of to walk that line and make your decisions.
Seth, did you have anything to add on that topic?
I think a good thing to add would be that the staff themselves evaluated on a case-by-case basis. If they were working in close proximity with the same employees, then day in, day out, they can monitor their condition, their their health, and bring it to one another's attention. So my assumption would be that most units were kept consistent so that you didn't have interaction of other employees throughout.
I think someone commented in here that there's been a lot of drawbacks of this, but they've seen a lot of productivity in their normal job. It's been a positive. And I think that kind of goes along with what Bill said about more folks working from home. And I think I'll just start with Bill, since he brought this topic up, but with the staff. Bill, has there been positives that have come out of this for you guys, or are you just seeing this as folks just not wanting to drive in? Or can you speak to some positives that have come from it?
Some positives are, the realization and support of, individual staffs and, lifestyle and flexibility. So the telework gives us opportunity to let people and their families adjust a little bit to their unique lives. So if they've got childcare issues, they can flex their schedules a little bit easier. Some people are, working earlier, taking longer breaks for lunch to spend time with families, working a little bit later in the afternoon. We're seeing really good productivity still from our staff, and we're delivering a lot of our products, but because of the attrition that we have and lack of hiring, that's a bit of a challenge for us. But clearly there's some big positives, some of the communication, and using some of the tools of Skype and Teams and these web tools that we're using today. We're clearly seeing that, there's ease of connection between people with these tools, and the ability to still collaborate and get things done and stay connected in that respect. On the downside, though, you do see a little bit of fatigue with, the Skype meetings, especially with large number of people in there, and to get and encourage people to participate and voice, opinions and ideas. That's a little bit of a challenge and a lesson learned in that respect.
Tom Pachillo, that same question for you. I know as a private consultant, it's got to be difficult, but have you noticed any positives in letting folks work from home? Any additional positives or anything positive that's come out of this?
Yeah, well, I just want to echo what Bill just said about the technology and the fact that, we can be collaborative. I often think, God forbid, what if this happened 20 years ago before the age of Zoom, what would we be doing? I hate to think about it, but to answer your question more directly, yeah, I think each person's home situation is a little different, just in general, and certainly during the pandemic. And, I've seen people, sending messages, emails and things at, 9 or 10 o'clock at night because they were home taking care of their school-age kids during the day. So I would say that's a positive that, it's, people can work kind of on their own schedule. It's also a little bit of a double-edged sword. I know Bill mentioned, Zoom fatigue, but, I've often, found myself too with the laptop sitting right there. I'll go on and do a little bit of work in the evening where I might not have otherwise, and that can cause some fatigue too. So a little bit of both, but I would say certainly there are some positives out of this as well. And as I mentioned earlier, the ability to attend, what would otherwise be remote conferences virtually is a positive as well.
Good for us here at Federal Highway 2. We've been able to attend more things than usual. I just had a follow-up question for you, Tom, as well. Tom Pachillo, are you finding that, are you guys more busy during this because possibly projects are taking longer to do, like maybe productivity's down, or is your workload essentially the same?
As far as from a productivity point of view, we're consistent. We've been very busy recently. I think it's just a coincidence that we've started a number of projects kind of simultaneously. But yeah, our productivity's there, and I would say it's pretty steady. So,
Good question for you, Tom. Yeah, it's Tom Donnelly. How are you guys handling billable time versus proposal time?
the same way we always have. You know, if you're obviously working on a project, you're charging the project, and working on a proposal, we charge to. We have a promo charge code. So I don't think it's any different now than it was before.
Yeah, this is Chris. The only thing I want to bring up is right now, I think we're reaching the point where people are starting to slack off as far as safety goes. So we've had to have our supervisors and superintendents spend more time in the field, make sure the crews are following all the COVID compliant things they're supposed to be doing, maintaining separation and so on. Another problem has been with the isolation of our office workers. So we find ourselves spending more time calling people up, just checking in with them and seeing how they are.
This is Seth Burgess, Connecticut DOT. I would agree with everything Chris basically just said. On a positive note, you know, state agencies are typically reluctant to change. And I think this situation, in light of what everyone's dealing with, it's forcing state agencies to make adjustments on the way things have been conducted historically. I think that's a major positive. A lot of learning curves, but it changes the way we work day to day. Another benefit that we see is a lot less travel time to and from projects from office staff that may have been more centrally located, which could increase some productivity because they're not in the car driving for an hour and a half to get out to a project site for a half an hour meeting, and then the travel time back. In the office setting, we've seen a lot less chit chat and time lost at the water cooler or waiting in line for the microwave, because typically at home, you hope you don't have a line for the microwave. And I say on a personal note for myself, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and before all this, I was complaining I never seemed to have enough time with her. And she was always mommy, mommy, mommy. And come March time, I was getting plenty of time with her for a couple months. And you know, the benefit with family is extremely crucial, and it's time you'll never get back. So it's extremely important that we all get that opportunity through this and try to look at that as a positive.
All right, well, thanks. I have one last thing. I was reminded here to plug the TSP2 Bridge Preservation LinkedIn group on LinkedIn. In fact, if you're on LinkedIn, they have a TSP2 Bridge Preservation group. You just search for TSP2 Bridge Preservation, and that will come up. That's all I have. That's all the questions for now, I believe. I don't think I have anything more that has been added.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.